Welcome back. Today we are going all the way to North Carolina, USA, and here the courts uphold laws giving adults a 2 more year window on child sex abuse lawsuits. So you know what this means for Jehovah's Witnesses? All of these lawsuits coming out, the courts are being lenient toward the victim. And we're going to talk a little bit today about statutes of limitations. Now, there's two statutes of limitations when we think of crimes. There's a crime and then there's your civil suit. So the crime itself, there are no statutes of limitations in the USA or Canada. And what does it say here? It says, what crimes have no statutes of limitations in the U.S.? Capital murder, murder of a federal employee, treason, espionage, and sexual offenses against minors. So sexual offenses against minors, there's no statutes of limitations. Report them to the police. The police will proceed with a criminal investigation. Now, if you want to get money from this, or you have damages, you have therapy bills to pay, and so on and so forth, you have to do what they call a civil suit. And the civil suits, in some cases, do have statutes of limitations. Now, in most places, if you were a victim of child abuse when you were young and you grew up and you went through life and you couldn't deal with it, or maybe you were in the cult still and you were told to keep your mouth shut, and you go all the way through life and you get to a point where you take some therapy and you get it out and you realize, this was a crime. So the courts are saying if you've taken therapy and your therapist says, yeah, this person just recognized this, the seriousness of this at this point, you might be 60 years old, you might be 50 years old, who knows? You took some therapy. Now you go to court with your civil claim. Civil claims in Canada here, and I'm going to pull up my screen here so you guys can see this. In Canada here, this is the U.S. Let's start with the U.S. This is an NCSL. I'll put the link in the thing here, but I'm going to get off the screen and you can see this. And this talks about all the statutes of limitations. So this is for information on state criminal statutes of limitations. And you can visit the National Association for Prosecution of Child Abuse statutes. So these are, like Alabama here, it has no special statute of limitation. Alaska has no statute of limitation for felony sex abuse. Arizona, yes, minority tolling. So it says Arizona does not have a special statute of limitation for child sex abuse. However, in certain cases, it has applied its statutory minority and disability, unsound mind provision to these. So there are some little bits of rules. You can go to this, look at your state. California, it says there's some limitations. So you can read through that and see what the limitations are in your state that you live in. Now, the U.S. is such a big place that each state is almost like a country. It's almost treated separately. They have their separate rules. But most of these states are extending. They're extending the statutes of limitations. Some are 30 years, I've noticed, and some are 20 years. So you have to go and look at your state. Now, when we go to Canada, the statutes of limitation, I'll pin this one if you're a Canadian. And this was interesting. The statutes of limitation in Canadian sexual abuse claims. This gets right into all the laws that were fought over the years on this. And right now it says if you are recently a victim of sexual abuse or a survivor of childhood abuse and have decided to come forward, but you are unsure about whether your claim can be pursued, you can contact us, and it gives the number. But it's saying the limitation period here for all of our provinces, British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, there's none. The only one is Quebec. Quebec, it sounds like they have some, and it doesn't say what they are. And then Northwest Territories, it says in certain cases. And then Yukon, there's none. And Prince Edward Island, there's some. It says the period doesn't run while the plaintiff is a minor. So there is a period. There was a period. But anyways, what's important is that there's no statute of limitation on reporting the crime. So the police, the law enforcement can pursue the crime itself. And contact a lawyer, and you can look at these charts to see if you can make a claim. And I wouldn't decide without contacting a lawyer. So we're going to take a look at the case law here that we're looking at today, and it's from North Carolina. North Carolina court upholds a law giving adults a 2-year window to file child sex abuse lawsuits. And it's quite interesting, this article, how the courts work. But the courts are giving more time. They're giving lenience toward the victim. And what is this doing for the churches? Well, we're going to pop over here. The Pope is telling the priests to break the Canadian law about reporting sexual abuse. That's what's going on here. Is the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses doing the same thing? Yes, they are. And guess what? There's a law of attraction at play, you know, the biblical principle, you reap what you sow. So if the Pope wants to hide crime and hide sex crimes that his bishops are doing, have at her, Pope, because your religion is going down. It's a law of attraction. You will reap what you sow. And there's 2 dioceses in Pennsylvania that went bankrupt, paying out CSA. The courts are not going for this crap anymore. They're not going for this confidentiality thing when it comes to child sex abuse. The courts aren't going for it, Watchtower. The Pope. The courts aren't going for this. So get ready to sell your property. And we're going to look at our next video on how Jehovah's Witnesses are selling all off their properties. But right now, let's see what the courts are doing. Let's see how the courts talk. And I'm going to run this play on this, and then you guys can follow along. So here we go.
North Carolina court upholds law giving adults 2-year window to file child sex abuse lawsuits. A portion of a North Carolina law that gave adults with child sexual abuse claims 2 additional years recently to seek civil damages is constitutional, a divided state appeals court has ruled. By a 2-1 decision, a panel of Court of Appeals judges reversed on Tuesday a similarly divided ruling by trial judges whose majority had declared in late 2021 that the General Assembly could not revive such a cause of action after the statute of limitations set in law for such claims expired. The case involves 3 former Gaston County student-athletes who are suing both the coach who was convicted of crimes against team members and the county school board. The 3 students were members on the East Gaston High School wrestling team during the mid-1990s and early 2000s. Absent the 2019 law called the Safe Child Act, child abuse victims effectively have until turning age 21 to file such a lawsuit. But the law said such suits could still be filed in 2020 and 2021 if the victim was 21 or over. Tuesday's split decision means the state Supreme Court probably will have the final say in the matter. The outcome could affect schools, churches and other organizations faced with such civil litigation, as well as plaintiffs who have filed scores of such suits. The trial judge panel had dismissed the lawsuit. Just a quick word from our sponsor.
The Smart Home becomes a podcast. To hear more at Mauser.com/empowering-innovation.
5 statute of limitations violated due process provisions found in the North Carolina Constitution, and that a defense based on such limitations was unconditionally protected. But Court of Appeals Judge Allison Riggs, who was elevated by Governor Roy Cooper this week to the Supreme Court and wrote the prevailing opinion, disagreed. She wrote that the Gaston County Board of Education had failed to show beyond a reasonable doubt that the state constitution contains an express provision that revived statute of limits are prohibited. She also said the law's 2-year window otherwise passes constitutional muster. Because adopting the board's position would require us to strike down as unconstitutional a duly enacted statute of our General Assembly and disregard the narrowly crafted legislation designed to address a stunningly pressing problem affecting vulnerable children across the state, we decline to convert an affirmative defense into a free pass for those who engaged in and covered up atrocious child sexual abuse, Riggs wrote. Court of Appeals Judge Fred Gore agreed with Riggs' reversal decision. In the dissenting opinion, Judge Jeff Carpenter wrote the majority was overruling the results of several binding legal cases from the Court of Appeals, as well as a key 1933 state Supreme Court decision. He said he believes reviving the statute of limitations violates a vested right, he added. I completely agree. Sexual abuse of children is vile. I agree that striking down legislation as facially unconstitutional is strong medicine, only suitable for clear constitutional violations, Carpenter wrote, but the stability and predictability of our justice system requires that we adhere to the precedents of the appellate courts. Gary Scott Goins, the former wrestling coach at East Gaston, was convicted of 17 sex-related crimes in 2014 and sentenced to at least 34 years in prison. Goins did not file a legal brief for this appeal. The Republican-controlled legislature approved the SAFE Act unanimously, and it was signed into law by Democratic Governor Roy Cooper. The state intervened in the lawsuit, with lawyers under Attorney General Josh Stein defending the law. Stein said Wednesday he was pleased with Tuesday's decision, saying this ability to hold accountable abusers is critical to helping people process traumatic child abuse and recover. The decision came more than a year after the state Supreme Court ordered that the case bypass the intermediate-level appeals court and be heard directly by the justices. The court's 4 registered Democrats at the time voted to take up the case. But a new edition of the Supreme Court, 5 of whom are registered Republicans, decided in March the Court of Appeals should rule in the case first. This story was originally published September 13, 2023, 4:26 p.m.
Okay, so
Next
there
article.
we have
McCarthy impeachment inquiry into Biden appears to win over
off.
even the most reluctant Republicans.
There we go. Okay, so there we have it. So this should really spell a warning out to Watchtower, the Catholic Church, that all these victims are going to come forth. There's more victims, and the courts are giving these victims more time to process civil suits. So what do I think about it? I think this is great. I think the more the merrier. If we're going to knock Babylon the Great down, it's going to be done through lawsuits. And once they're broke, they can't turn the lights on. That's the end of them. And then you give ourselves 10, 20 years. Pretty soon we forget about them. Pretty soon it's like the Roman Empire. They're just ruins. We think of them. The Catholic Church had had its reign for all those years. And all of these churches like the Watchtower that are so in bed with the Catholic Church when it comes to hiding pedophilia, hiding crimes in our countries. So the countries, the courts, the justice system, it's full of it, and it is sick of it, and it's allowing the victims to sue these churches. So that's the rest of the story. Credits for North Carolina for everything they're doing. And all over the U.S., we look at Pennsylvania, all the lawsuits that are going on there, Montana, all over the world. This is just a sign that more is coming. So folks, until next time, keep living your life with love. Bye for now.